John Harbaugh expects to have the Giants in the postseason by next year, and here's how he can lay the foundation to make that happen. Locked on Giants starts right now.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, now the number one sports podcast network in America. My name is Patricia Traina, credentialed member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find all of my written work. And as always, welcome to our Everydayer Club members, to our Blue Crew community members, to our newcomers, and everybody else in between. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Giants is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, Giant fans, Harbaugh Mania continues. The press conference chairs have been put away, the podium, all that stuff has been put away. The hard work now begins for John Harbaugh, new Giants head coach, as he puts together his staff. So on today's show, we're going to take a look at what he needs to do, the biggest items on his to-do list, all right? And I have a few that I'll mention and why they're so important. Then in segment 2, we're going to take a look at why John Harbaugh will be successful for the New York Giants. I mean, this is a different type of hire than any other hire that they've had at head coach since Tom Coughlin. So we'll talk about why he stands to be the right guy, the successful one who's going to turn this franchise around. And then finally, in segment 3, we're going to start getting into some player stuff, or getting back to some player stuff. We kind of got away from that with the Harbaugh Mania going on. But we're going to take a look at some potential trade candidates for the Giants and if it really makes sense for the Giants to trade them and would they consider trading them. And, you know, I have about 4 or 5 on my list here that we'll talk about in segment 3. So that's our topic list for today. Again, welcome to everybody. All right, let's get into it. John Harbaugh's got a to-do list right now that's probably miles long. Obviously, the first thing on that to-do list is going to be building his coaching staff. Now, in the past, given the success he's been able to have, Harbaugh has put together pretty good coaches. And one of the things he was asked during his introductory press conferences, what kind of, coaching staff do you envision? And he stressed one very important thing: teachers, not buddies of mine, but teachers. And that makes a difference. All right. Now, without going into specifics, since Tom Coughlin left the Giants, head coaches that followed him, some of them were guilty of bringing their buddies onto the coaching staff, and it didn't work out very well. All right. I probably don't have to tell you who, because you could probably go back and look at the teams since Tom Coughlin and figure some of that stuff out for yourself. But I can tell you that some of the assistant coaches that were hired were buddies or had a prior working relationship at some point way back in the coach's future, or I should say the coach's past, and they were buddies. Now, John Harbaugh, in all likelihood, is going to bring with him some of his staff from the Ravens. The difference here, though, folks, is that I don't think you can count them as really buddies, like a friend doing a friend a favor because they need a job. These are people, the ones that he is reportedly going to bring. And I don't have the full list, but once I get it, I'll share that with you. But these are people who have reputations as being good teachers. And really, folks, if you think about it, that's kind of what's been missing with some of the Giants position groups over the recent years. For example, defensive backs group, they could have probably used better teachers. All right. They tried it with Jerome Henderson, who really wasn't a bad teacher, but, he wasn't resonating with Deonte Banks. So they moved on from him and they brought in, different guys. That didn't work out that great. All right. So teachers make the difference. And that's what John Harbaugh said he's looking for and what he's going to try and bring in. And it's going to be a combination. Like I said, he'll probably bring a good number of his assistants from Baltimore. Some of them who have been blocked, he'll probably wait them out to see what the next Baltimore Ravens head coach does. But the important thing is bring in teachers, not guys who just need a job and, hey, hey, buddy, help me out. I need a job here. Giant coaches in the past have been guilty of that. So that's number one when it comes to things that John Harbaugh has on his to-do list. The second thing, every team is different. Every team, has a different kind of, makeup, if you will. Harbaugh needs to identify what message he wants to get across to the current Giant team. And by that, I mean, is it going to be a matter of working harder, working smarter? What's going to be the message? And he's got to drive that message home. Every team is different, but the core foundation of the message stays the same. And, Harbaugh, he's been basically running the same message down with the Ravens, all throughout his head coaching career. So that's something he's going to bring to the Giants and try to stress upon to them. And now what's that message going to be? That when you walk in the building, you better love football and love it enough to do whatever it takes to do justice to the game. None of this, oh, my brand, oh, my stats, oh, my this. It's about the team. And if you're not about the team, then don't expect to be wearing the NY on your helmet, because it's just not going to happen. Too many times, again, with past head coaches, that message was communicated, but it wasn't really enforced. I think Harbaugh will enforce it. I really do. And if they don't, then they have got problems. Now, that being said, the other thing that I think he needs to do is he's going to bring in some of his former Ravens players. You just know what's going to happen. Every coach does it. And I always equate that to, it's like, your local fast food chain. Let's say McDonald's, for example. McDonald's opens up in a new neighborhood, a new location. Usually McDonald's will send corporate trainers down to help the new franchise get off the ground and running and do everything according to McDonald's standards. So the Ravens players that will probably be brought in are going to be good leaders, and they're going to help with disseminating the message that Harbaugh wants communicated. Now, one thing you probably need to understand here, Harbaugh historically has had a very big coaching staff. I think in Baltimore, he had something like 22 or 23 coaches. So, how is this reporting structure within the locker room going to work? Well, you're going to have, obviously, the players. You're going to have the leaders, team captains. You'll have the assistant coaches. You'll have the coordinators. You'll have Harbaugh. But I also think that the players will have a direct line to Harbaugh. It won't just be, Harbaugh removing himself from the locker room and, addressing any problems that pop up. That's not his style. So the bottom line, we use the word culture a lot, and I think it's overblown, that word. It's the atmosphere that he has to set. And the atmosphere has to be one that's demanding, that is rewarding. If you work at it, you'll get your opportunity. If you don't, I don't care if you're a first round pick or you have $100 million contract, you're not going to be here. It's just got to be one that unites everybody towards a common goal. And, here's the thing, these Giant players, the ones that are going to be coming back, they got to by now be sick of losing. So it would behoove them to listen to what John Harbaugh has to say, because obviously you had guys, in the past that, maybe they checked out or they weren't given a full effort every week or whatever the case may be. Just a lot of splintering that went on in other ways, not necessarily, teammate versus teammate, but just not everybody on the same page. Everybody's got to basically, at the end of the day, get on the same bus to go home, as opposed to taking, 53 different cabs, if you will. So John Harbaugh, I think, will enforce all that. He will bring all that to the locker room, and that will lay the foundation that they will build upon to be successful and get themselves to the playoffs. All right, now, why will John Harbaugh be successful in all that? I'll give you some reasons right after this. Hey, folks, what if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Hey, Giant fans, the World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app, and the layout makes it so simple to scroll through the matchups and compare views. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. The seat view feature is a game changer. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat before you buy. Prices include fees up front, so there's no last-second surprises at checkout. And alerts for teams and matches make it easy to grab tickets the moment they drop instead of missing out. So go on and take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we're just continuing right along here on the Locked On Giants podcast. We're still 5 days a week. Championship weekend coming up, obviously, this weekend. Who knows? Maybe next year the Giants will be vying for a championship. Wouldn't that be nice? I know I would sure enjoy that after year, it seems. I'm just, starting the offseason content so early. But anyway, in this segment, we're going to take a look at why I think John Harbaugh is going to be successful in turning this Giants program around. So the number one thing that struck me about John Harbaugh, and just I should add that, after his introductory press conference, he went around and he met with, different media outlets. And of course, he had a brief media session with the Giants beat writers, and I was in that group. And the thing that struck me about John Harbaugh, not just from meeting him and also talking with his dad, Jack, and his wife, Ingrid, and his mother, Jackie, all great people, by the way. John Harbaugh is no nonsense. He's a nice guy. If you met him on the street, I think you would like him. If he was your neighbor, I think you'd be best friends with him. But he's also no nonsense. Don't mistake niceness for weakness. He knows what he wants, and he knows he won't accept anything, less. But what struck me most about John Harbaugh is he reminded me of Bill Parcells and Tom Coughlin a little bit, kind of old school. Bill Parcells, different style of coaching. I mean, I'm not so sure his style of coaching would work in today's NFL, given how players are a little bit different than they were back in the day. But Parcells was all about, knowing how to push the right buttons with his players. Maybe some of his ways, again, wouldn't work today, but he knew how to get the most out of his guys. But I'm not saying, John Harbaugh plays those types of head games like Parcells used to. He's probably more of a Coughlin type. Coughlin demanded accountability. He demanded professionalism. He demanded a guy's best. And, everybody, it's interesting. All the players, and I covered Coughlin from the very beginning when he came in, and I remember how the players used to complain about the rules. Oh, you got to be 5 minutes early. You got to wear your socks a certain way. You got to wear a suit on the plane. It's with this guy. If you think about it, the message from Tom Coughlin, you got to take pride in what you do. All right. If you're going to throw your garbage all over the locker room in front of your locker, that's not taking pride. That's sloppy. And if you're going to be sloppy with your workspace, chances are you're not going to be, or chances are you're going to be sloppy with how you play the game. If you're going to not practice the right way, you're not going to play the right way. If you're going to be a minute early for a meeting, well, how are you supposed to sit down and, get settled in and collect your thoughts and be able to be actively involved in that meeting? Those were all rules that Coughlin had, those and many others. Harbaugh, I don't think he'll go to that extreme, but from what I understand, talking to people who covered him down in Baltimore, he will demand professionalism from his players. And I think, quite honestly, in recent years with the Giants, that professionalism might have gotten away from some of the players. Not all of them, but some of them. You just look at how they, their lockers were. You look at how they performed on the field, the sloppiness, the lack of attention to detail, and you say, where's the professionalism? I don't think Harbaugh will allow that. I think he will clean that up, and that will certainly help him. Now, that being said, I think he's also going to have patience. Yes, a team can go from worst to first. Absolutely. We saw it this year. But you want to build long-term success. You don't want to be a flash in the pan. Last year, Washington, in 2024, Washington, they had a great year. And then what happened this year? They fell off the radar. The Giants don't want that to happen. Harbaugh doesn't want that to happen. So it may take a little extra time before, the Giants get to the Super Bowl, but Harbaugh is going to build it up the right way so that he has that success year after year after year. Because getting to the postseason is one thing. Staying in the postseason is another. And the idea is you want to stay in it. You don't want to just get there just to say that you were there. That's kind of like going to Disneyland, buying a postcard and then leaving just to say you were there. It doesn't work that way. All right. So Harbaugh is going to make sure, I think, that they sustain success. All right. The other thing, building a core foundation. I talk about this all the time. If you look at Harbaugh's Ravens team, they really didn't have massive turnover from year to year. They were, for the most part, able to keep their core pieces together. I think we'll maybe stop seeing the Giants letting talent walk out the door and seeing them retain some of this talent that becomes part of the foundation. So I expect that to change as well. So all these little things, folks, I think will help Harbaugh be set up for success. All right. Now, obviously, there are little things that you can't control. You can't control injuries. You never know. Somebody who you maybe thought was a reserve has to step up. And now all of a sudden now you've got, this guy's really good. And how can I bench him once the starter returns? So there's going to be a little bit of trial and error. But that being said, not as much trial and error as if you were dealing with a first-time head coach who has not had a record of success like John Harbaugh has had. So there's a lot to be excited about with John Harbaugh. I mean, I kind of wish it was starting tomorrow. I really do, because I can't wait to see how the team comes together, what the message is, how the players respond. Right now, I've said this before, they're in a honeymoon stage, but there's no reason to think that the honeymoon can't last for several months beyond the offseason. All right, coming up next, folks, there's been some talk about which players should the Giants consider trading, especially given that the Giants don't have any comp picks coming their way in the draft this year. So maybe they get some extra picks back via a trade. Who should they trade and who shouldn't? We'll break down the fact and fiction behind all that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, if you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. So if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners to this podcast can get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give their job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Hey, Giant fans, tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever just to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by trusted local experts from start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work with you to get you every deduction possible. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, and it gives you real peace of mind in knowing that an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150, all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. And in this segment, let's talk about some guys who I suspect a lot of you might think maybe don't have a place on this team for the long term and might be suitable trade candidates. But let's talk about whether they really are suitable trade candidates or if it's just a pipe dream. All right, so we'll start with Dexter Lawrence. Now, believe it or not, I have heard Dexter's name come up as a potential trade candidate. Some people believe that Dexter doesn't want to be a Giant anymore, that he's just tired of the losing. He wants to go elsewhere. The big story, I think this all originated over the fact that Leonard Williams and Julian Love invited Dexter Lawrence out to Seattle to support him while they were in the postseason. And, Dexter kind of got a taste of that. I think that's where that story originated. But anyway, the Giants aren't trading Dexter. All right. Now, what's interesting about Dexter is he has no more guaranteed money in his contract. But here's the thing, folks. When they traded away Leonard Williams, they never really replaced him. So why would they trade away Dexter Lawrence? Now, yes, Dexter had an off year last year. The elbow was a problem. It was a problem all year. See what happens, and maybe Dexter is now, healthy. Give him a chance to get healthier. See how he responds with Harbaugh coming in and the changes that are going to be made. You never know. He just might get that little boost in the arm that he needs, I think, that was lacking last year. So I wouldn't trade Dexter Lawrence. No, definitely not. Okay, Kayvon Thibodeau. Now here's an interesting fun fact for you. The Giants have $67.588 million tied up in their outside linebacker group. Kayvon Thibodeau in 2026 is going to count for $14.751 million. Now you might say, oh my God, that's too high. It's actually, according to Over the Cap, it's actually the 25th highest amount amongst outside linebackers. So it's not that bad. But that being said, you saw the struggles that the Giants had with getting Thibodeau, Brian Burns, and Abdul Carter on the field all at the same time. Now, to be fair, Charlie Bullen never really got to work a whole lot with Kayvon Thibodeau because he had that shoulder injury and he ended up missing, I think, 5 games, the last 5 games of the year. So we never really got to see what Bullen would have done. So the question that needs to be asked, will the next defensive coordinator, whoever he might be, can he figure out a way to get the 3 of them on the field at the same time? I think there is a way to do it. I mean, Abdul Carter was at his best, believe it or not, when they lined him up inside as an inside linebacker on the pass rush, and they did stunts and twists to get him to the outside. That being said, Kayvon Thibodeau is in the final year of his contract. The Giants picking up his option year. He's going to want to be paid. All right, whether he deserves it or not, whether his production warrants it or not, he's going to want to be paid. And he's not giving this team a hometown discount. I can tell you that right now. So there's a school of thought. Move him now and get something, or let him walk and hope that you get a comp pick. My feeling, I don't like to necessarily create a hole at a position. But that said, how big of a hole would it actually be if you've got Burns and you've got Carter? Plus, my feeling is this. I would rather have draft picks than to say, oh, we'll just get a comp pick for him next year. That's never guaranteed. Look at all the great talent that the Giants let walk out the door. Saquon, Xavier McKinney, all right, just to name a couple. And they got nothing in terms of comp picks in return for those guys. So it is not guaranteed. You trade, you not only are guaranteed to get something back, but you could use it that coming draft. You don't have to wait until next year. So I could see a scenario where Thibodeau is traded, but maybe not, I don't know if they'll do it right away. But if they're going to, get the draft picks. Why not? The Giants need several pieces to fill in this roster. Now they don't need a quarterback, so they might say, okay, you know what? Maybe we could just get by with the 7 picks we have, which is probably what they're going to do. Then again, maybe not. We'll see how aggressive they'll be. Okay, the next guy, Jalen Hyatt. Now, you guys know I like Jalen Hyatt, super sweetheart of a guy, but he's not fitting in here. And, I believe the Giants are going to draft another receiver to go with Malik Neighbors once Malik is healthy. You're also going to have Darius Slayton, who's coming back. I know some of you aren't too happy about that, but I do believe Slayton will be back. I don't think Wan'Dale Robinson will be back. I don't think they're going to be able to re-sign him, but you know what? Slot receivers can be a dime a dozen, and I wouldn't mind seeing Gunnar Olszewski coming back and competing for that role. Not saying that would be my first choice, but I could see him maybe having earned that right. Wan'Dale, I just don't think comes back. I'd be surprised if he does. So anyway, where does Jalen Hyatt fit in? He doesn't play special teams. At best, he would be like a 4th or 5th receiver. Do you carry him or do you move him to a team that needs a receiver? I say you move him, and again, I like the kid. I like him. I've had him on the show before. But the handwriting's on the wall. So we'll see if the Giants move him and see if they can't get something for him. What that something is, I have no idea, but something is better than nothing. All right, and then the last guy I want to talk about is cornerback Deonte Banks. Now, Banks, he is guaranteed $4.32 million, which is his total cap hit. It's all guaranteed. Banks is entering the fourth year and the final year of his rookie deal. His option year, obviously, was not picked up. Banks is a pretty good kick returner. We've seen that. Is that enough to justify carrying him? I could see so. It's a lot of money to spend on a kick returner. I get that. I do believe the Giants are going to add to the cornerback group. And Banks, in a pinch, could he, play for you? Yeah. Do you need him to play man-to-man coverage and press coverage, which is his strength? Yeah. Could maybe a different coach who is a better teacher get through to him? Possibly. I don't know. So far, two coaches haven't been able to with the Giants. I would probably say hang on to Banks. I don't think I would move him. He's got value as a kickoff returner. And if you need him in a pinch as a cornerback, then you go that route. But I do think the Giants are going to add to the cornerback spot. They have to. They just don't have enough there. Cordell Flott is an unrestricted free agent, pending. They have nothing else there outside of Paulson and Debo. So I don't think Banks gets traded. So to recap, of the four guys I mentioned, Hyatt probably is the one guy I could see maybe being moved. Thibodeau would be tempting to move, but get a creative defensive coordinator in here, and maybe he has a way to use Thibodeau, Burns, and Carter all at the same time. So, that's how I feel about it. Obviously, we'll see how the Giants roster takes shape, because if they, pick up guys in free agency, now that changes the complexion and the possible direction that they go in. And it's going to be fun. And by the way, for those of you who are wondering why I didn't say Evan Neal's contract is up. Pending unrestricted free agent, won't be back. So you can't trade a guy who is a pending unrestricted free agent. His contract's up. So you cannot trade those guys for what it's worth. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Giants. And before we say goodbye, as always, thank you for making the Locked On Giants podcast part of your day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in America. If you're a true diehard New York Giants fan, check out our Everyday or All Access. You'll get one-on-one text to access with me, all access episode, an exclusive newsletter, a 15% discount to the Locked On merch store, regular video calls with me, including one that we're going to have on Friday with our Blue Crew and our All Access members, and a whole lot more. Head on over to LockedOnNYGiants.supercast.com to join the Everydayer program and unlock All Access. You can also find a link to that in the show notes. All right, Giant fans, that's it for me. I'll see you tomorrow on a whole new episode of Locked On Giants.